Today on the Leipzig Loko, we are getting ready for the 10th season of this save, and it's going to be our first one in the Champions League. So we're going to do a transfer recap of what has happened throughout the window so far, and also play our first game of the league season against the two Bundesliga champions in Hannover. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 101 of the Leipzig Loko with Lokomotive Leipzig here on Sean Does FM. I hope you are doing well, and coming up today we start the 10th season of this save. We're going to play our first Bundesliga game, which is against Hannover, those guys, the two Bundesliga champions from last season, and before then a bit of a transfer recap as well. We didn't actually do as much as we have done in previous seasons, but it still might take a little bit of time. It's just the one game coming up in today's episode, a little bit of business which might be of some interest to you. So if you're looking forward to that coming up in today's episode, as well as the new season of this save, then do remember to go down below, leave a thumbs up on the video, and if you haven't done so already and have been enjoying the series here on the channel, also consider hitting that subscribe button and turning that notification bell on as well. It is greatly appreciated. But at the end of last week, we did play our last game in last year's Bundesliga season, needing a win to qualify for the Champions League. If you missed that one, I'll leave a link to it over in the top right corner. Also actually made a transfer in that episode as well and got through the end of season review stuff, so it is worth watching. Thankfully, did end up finishing in 4th on the Bundesliga table, so it does mean we get Champions League football for this season. Going into the window, we did have £16 million to spend, albeit we did spend a fair chunk of that during that episode, as I said, with our first signing, which was of a Nico Benitez, but we've made a couple of more, so we'll recap that before we get stuck into this first game of the league season, and also have a look at the season preview. So we'll go over and have a look at the transfer history. As you can see, actually got quite a bit of money still in our transfer budget. That is off the back of a fairly recent sale, and also just in case something happens, which could mean we need to save that money to replenish our stocks in a certain position, and it does regard a player with a 50% sell-on fee in his contract, which unfortunately I have not been able to get him to renew a contract, and he is quite highly wanted by some Champions League clubs. That extra 17 million could actually be quite crucial to make up for the money that we don't get on that sale if he does go and we don't get half of that price. But these are the deals that we have done. As you can see, nowhere near as many as we have done over the past couple of seasons since we have come up to the Bundesliga. Only 4 players coming in, and one of those you already know about in Nico Benito, and we had a couple of players go out in part to kind of make up for the players who we have been bringing in, just improving the overall quality of the squad here at Lokomotive Leipzig. So if you missed it at the end of last week, we got in on a Nico Benito quite early because he was wanted by some pretty good clubs. Only paid overall about 18 million for him, but around about 7.5 million of that I think was up front already. Doing a great job in training since coming back. For the start of the season here at Lokomotive Leipzig, already valued between 75 million to 89 million pounds. That looked like a pretty good bit of business that we did get done, coming from Tenerife over in the second tier of La Liga, and he should strengthen us in the attacking midfield, which, to be fair, we didn't really need to do, but he was too good a player, I felt, to turn down, especially for the price that we did get him for. So that did mean that we had at the time Spasijevic, Xerxes and Benito for this upcoming season, so it did mean that one of those other players probably had to leave the club, so there wasn't too much of a log jam in the cam role. And obviously with Zoran being quite a promising player, he actually picked up the signing of the season in the Bundesliga for last year off the back of the episode at the end of last week. It did mean that Jordan Xerxes was the player who was always more than likely going to depart the club, and we sold him first up. He was a player who ended up going to Real Sociedad. The fans weren't too happy about that one because they did hold him in quite a high regard. To be fair, he's been pretty good for us in the 2 years that we did have him for after we got him from Bayer Leverkusen on a free transfer. As you can see, pretty decent average rating, just below a 7, but getting 12.5 million for him from Real Sociedad. Not a bad bit of business at all, as I said, for a player that we did pick up on a free, but Jordan Xerxes is no longer at the club, and we did just lose a little bit of money bringing in Benito and getting rid of Xerxes. Off the back of that, before we signed our next player, the next bit of business that we did do was getting rid of Value Alte for 6.75 million to Bayer Leverkusen. These days, those guys are back in the Bundesliga, having finished second in the 2 Bundesliga last season. He was decent in his first season. He was a player who was actually affected by the late deal that we did to get Andre Hurtado into the club in that window back in 2029-30. So it did mean instead of being a regular starter, he dropped down to being more of a squad player. Last season, he didn't play as much as he did in that first season as well. And I was able to find some players who were cheaper and had better ability than him, so we sold him to Bayer Leverkusen for 6.75 million, make a slight profit on that deal after getting him off Hamburg a couple of seasons ago when those guys were relegated to the 2 Bundesliga, so we make a slight profit on that deal. Fourth value, Alte, he has left the club for £6.75 million, and later on that day, we did sign a new replacement to be that 4th choice centre-back, in behind, of course, Osvaldo Hurtado as well. Is still Billy Camillo at the club, and that player was Nicolas Montes. He comes here for £2.3 million out of Colombia. If we put him on a central defender, which is where he will be playing, because he's definitely nowhere near as good at right back, he actually has quite a bit of potential. 2.5-star current ability, was a little bit better than value Alte, and as you saw, cost us quite cheap, only £2.3 million. Spent 1 season in Poland, where he did a decent job there in the Extralaksa, but before then did a decent job for Deportes Tolima over in Colombia, and is quite promising, a lot more potential than we had previously with value Alte. I think that's quite a good bit of business getting him in for a lot cheaper than what we did get rid of value Alte for, so that was quite good. I thought Nicolas Montes coming in to replace value Alte as our 3rd/4th choice centre-back, one of the backups in behind that standout next-gen pair of Osvaldo, as well as Andre Hurtado. And the other deal that we did coming in to this transfer window when it did open up is we did sign a new striker here at Lokomotive Leipzig. As you can see on the right-hand side, Carlos Pimentel has been loaned out alongside a couple of players who were down in the B team, and Matty White, Joshua Polini, and Johnny Angelo. But we did sign Christopher Velarde. A reason for this was because there was actually a bid in from Brentford for Nicolo Amadori, which we did accept because it was well over his transfer value, but Amadori did actually turn the contract down, but still, we had the money to go through with this deal, and we signed Christopher Velarde out of Lecce over in Italy, and to be fair, he looks very, very similar to Amadori. I was tossing up between him and an elder Mexican striker who I think was playing for PSV. This guy was a lot cheaper, a lot lower wages, and in terms of the general build, is a very similar player to Nicolo Amadori, which I thought could be quite useful because last season, when we lost Amadori, especially in the second part of the season, players like Svetko Kuseta didn't quite perform as well, even though he somehow picked up the signing of the season. But as a pressing forward on attack, he's pretty good. But the main thing, we do use Amadori here at Lokomotive Leipzig as a big threat from set pieces, and this guy is very similar, as I said, in terms of build, 1.92 meters tall. His jumping reach is nowhere near as good because Amadori has 20 on that, but he's a decent hero of the ball, and his other attributes for a pressing forward are quite good. Decent potential actually for you more than that, but for around about 13.5 million, that's not a bad deal. And at 18 years old, another player who in the future should become homegrown club as well as nation. So he will now slot in probably actually as our 1st choice striker, because based on overall attributes, he is actually a little bit better than Amadori. But unfortunately, in the preseason, he did pick up an injury in a win over Derby County. He's still out for 5 to 11 days, so it does mean he'll miss our first couple of games of the Bundesliga season. But a new striker here in Christopher Velarde, as I said, probably would usually start over Amadori, so we can hopefully get him up to that potential, but at least is a very similar option in terms of build to our star striker from last season. As you can see, the height exactly the same, not quite as good with that jumping reach, but 2 Italians who are good in the air, and it should mean if we bring one off the bench in place of the other, we're still pretty good with that striker being at the far post or near post from those set pieces, which is going to be quite good. As I said, Caseta, that was a bit of an issue with him last season, so that's quite good. 2 quite similar strikers now who are at the club, but one with a lot more potential. And going back to the transfer history, we did do one more bit of business that did involve the first team. That was because we had a bid come in for James Baker from Schalke, and it was for £18 million overall, which at that stage was above his transfer value when he was here at Lokomotive Leipzig. Good player who we only had for 1 full season, but we decided to let him go for that price. So he these days will be at Schalke, at another divisional rival here in the Bundesliga. We picked him up last season for a free transfer, so we get £16 million for him. I think is a very good bit of business, quite similar to that deal with Joshua Zirkzee. Was good for us in behind Sebastian Escobar last season, but to be fair, wasn't ever really going to be a starter for us, so to get that money for a backup player I thought was pretty good. And the only player I could find on our shortlist who was interested in coming here and actually a little bit better than James Baker was a player from Tottenham on loan, and this is Sinvaldo Bundock. He will be our backup in behind Escobar for this upcoming season, a deep line playmaker on support. As you can see, some really good goal attributes for that position that he will be playing here at Lokomotive Leipzig, the Tottenham man, who is valued around about 30 to 45 million. There is a optional future fee in this loan deal. It's 56 million, which to be fair is not something I think we're ever going to be able to pay, but hopefully we might be able to bring him back on a permanent deal next season, maybe for a bit cheaper than that. But certainly here's a player with a lot of potential, a good option off of the bench at 23 years old. Is the Brazilian. He's been a couple of loan spells out at the likes of West Ham and Norwich down in the Championship and done decently for those teams since he did come over to Tottenham from Flamengo, but here's a quite promising player, good option on the bench, and that did mean that we could save up that James Baker money if we do need to with that Matthias Tell situation. And I did actually nearly sell Matthias Tell earlier in the transfer window and bring in a replacement, the player we would have replaced him with if we go over and have a look at the transfer target shortlist. It would have been Pablo, who actually is a better attribute player than Matthias Tell on that left-hand side as an inside forward on attack. But unfortunately, once I remembered that he has that 50% sell-on fee in his contract, Matthias Tell, it did mean that despite the fact that the bid that came in for him was for £67 million, which is well and truly over that release clause, for some reason that did not get triggered, maybe because no clubs at that stage were technically in the Champions League. But of course, that sell-on fee percentage did mean we wouldn't have quite had the money at that stage to go through with that deal, because he would have cost around £50 million up front. So that would not have been a goer. So to pull out of that deal, but the team who did come in for Matthias Tell were RB Leipzig. So to be fair, might not have been the worst idea to cancel that deal and frustrate those guys anyway. But Matthias Tell is still wanted by some clubs, and obviously when teams do enter the Champions League, that could be an issue, that 50 million release clause with that 50% sell-on fee that he is going to get. So we might only see about 25 million pounds or a little bit less of that money if Matthias Tell does leave. So that could be an issue we have to deal with before the end of the transfer window. So that's a reason why that extra money that we did get from that sale of James Baker could be quite useful. It does mean that maybe we could go back after someone like Pablo, but just try and pay a little bit less up front. And also, another reason that that deal didn't quite look so good at the time was because before then, we nearly got rid of Ryan, our backup left back. He was underbid from Bayer Leverkusen, not Fortuna Düsseldorf. He turned a contract down there. It would have been worth £12 million or just over, which I don't think is bad money for a player that we signed for $6 million a couple of seasons ago. And the reason that that ties in to that Matthias Tell deal, of course, is because Matthias Tell is homegrown nation. So the idea was that we were going to replace Ryan with someone who was homegrown nation, so we could go after Pablo down that left wing, and the player that we were going to get, or we would have got if Ryan had accepted that deal from Bayer Leverkusen. Hopefully I can still find him here. I can. It would have been Dirk de Jong, a player that we're actually looking at signing last season. We agreed terms and everything with him for a deal around about £10 million up front, rising to £15 million, and that would have been quite useful because he is homegrown nation. But unfortunately, because Ryan did pull out of that deal, that did not go through, and it made things a little bit trickier as well with that Tell situation. We wouldn't have enough players at the club who were homegrown nations. So a couple of deals there that nearly went through, one that could still go through at some stage. Matthias Tell could leave the club, but thankfully now got a bit more money in the kitty if that does happen, so we can hopefully sign a decent player like Pablo to come in for him. If we can't get him or need an extra homegrown player, the player that we could replace Tell with is Landry Wilson. He's a winger out of Borussia Dortmund. I think we've actually played him a little bit in this save so far, not nearly as good as Pablo or even as Matthias Tell, but certainly is in our price range if that release clause does get triggered, and he is a decent enough player, so he should be able to come in and be first choice on that left-hand side. So that's what's happened so far in the transfer window. As you can tell, still might be a little bit going on, and also still on the hunt ideally, but potentially upgrades as well on the right wing. Mikhail Masti still first choice, not that great star rating, albeit on the bench Spaljark does have very good potential. And also because we spent most of our money on a striker and an attacking midfielder at a young age, it does mean we have not really improved in the area I was hoping to, which is balling midfielder. Still Justin Blomé actually outranks quite a few players attribute-wise that are on our shortlist. Manuel on the bench though could be someone that we improve on if we do get some money in for him, albeit only valued at £2.6 million because he is in the last year of his contract. So not much happening in terms of movement here. Does mean our team compared to last season is very, very similar, just one change, and that is, as I said earlier, that Nico Benito does come in over Zoran Spasijevic, a bit harsh on the player who I thought was the signing of the season, but unfortunately for him, Nico Benito, attribute-wise, does look just a little bit better and certainly has quite a bit of potential, but it does mean that 1-2 punch in the cam role is a very, very strong one. But apart from that, and also the fact that usually Amadori would be on the bench and would have Bellardi starting in that striker role, it is a pretty similar team to last season, obviously, as well. Bandok comes in for Baker after we sold him, but apart from that, it is the same team that ran out for us last season. Also, Kalvocin has just come back from injuries. He'll be missing for this first game of the season. That does mean that Jan Horvath makes his way onto the bench as the right back option in behind of Sika. Also, our players not quite as match fit as usual, which is a little bit interesting, but in terms of our pre-season, we have done a decent job, won all of our games, 4 friendlies, which we did pick up wins in, albeit none of them overly convincing before we took part in the first round of the DFB Pokal against the team, not even in the Regional Liga, and picked up a very comfortable 5-0 win. So we've got off to a good start to the season, but today we'll get things underway with our first match in the Bundesliga, where we do take on the newly promoted champions of the 2 Bundesliga in Hannover. Before that, we'll look at the season preview off the back of those moves that we did make, and as you can see, we're actually quite highly rated going into this season, the highest rated we've been so far in the save. We are the 6th favourites to take out the Bundesliga this season, and also Matthias Tell has snuck his way into the overall best 11, so that's a little bit concerning now that he is quite wanted by some clubs in the Champions League, but certainly not without a chance potentially of challenging for the title this season, hopefully keeping improving from what we've done last couple of seasons of the save, but also of course do have Champions League football to contend with. But first up, it does look like a pretty winnable game for us. We take on the team that are expected to finish rock bottom, the champions of last season's 2 Bundesliga in Hannover. This is a team that got straight back up to the Bundesliga, and our record against them actually is not that great of late. So they are a team in the past that has been a bit of a bogey team for us. Also worth noting, a couple more former German players are now managing teams in the save, and this is one of those. Timo Werner is in charge of Hannover, but based on media prediction, this is a game that should be very winnable for us on the opening day of the season, even though they picked up a quite similar win in that first round of the DFB Pokal. But even though this one is away from home, hopefully we can get things underway for this new season and get off to a good start, and hopefully get up near Bayern Munich and get ourselves near the top of the table nice and early. So we'll play this one game in today's episode off the back of just wrapping up those transfers that we have made so far. We just ran through our team before, so don't need to go through that in too much detail. Obviously, just that injury that we are dealing with currently to our new striker in Bellardi, so it does mean that Amadori does keep his place up front, and also Vocin coming back from an injury, so that means that Horvath is on the bench as well as the new signing on loan in Bandok. So a couple of changes, but really not that many from last season. That does mean going to this season, our dynamics are a lot better than they have been going into the past couple of seasons. So hopefully that does mean we can get off at least to a better start than we'd had last season, when of course the Gegenpress was under pressure a little bit. Since then we did change it about halfway through last season, and also of course we did have a quite tough start to last season. This season it does look just a little bit easier. We get the action underway. It was the Hannover going with a 4-3-3 now, about 5 minutes in. The first highlight here is a free kick, and the wanted man in Matthias Tell is going to take it, tries to pick out the top right corner there. It comes off the post, then Amadori nearly gets a chance to bundle that one home, but unfortunately can't quite put it over the line. So the first decent chance is in our favour, but about 15 minutes into this game, it is still 0-0, albeit we are on the front foot. Now we have a throw down that far side, but unfortunately Hannover do win that ball. They are at home in the red and the black. We are in our usual home uniform, the yellow with the blue shorts. Now Kunze plays that one over, and Bierschuk in quite a bit of space down that right-hand side is able to put one into the mix, but thankfully San Jose can claim that before it does find the attacker there at the far post. Hopefully this ends up being a decent chance for us here in this opening game of the season. Would be nice to pick up maximum points, even though it is away from home against the team who are coming back up from the 2 Bundesliga. That's an iffy pass there, looking for someone down that right-hand side, and now Hannover start to make their way on the edge of the box. Sicker with a tackle, nearly wins that one back for us. It goes there to Meyer on the edge of the box. Really good chance there, but thankfully just blast that one over the top left corner. So still locked up at 0-0 halfway through the first half. And Hannover are starting to get a little bit more momentum in this game, which is a little bit concerning, but for now we'll still encourage the guys and hopefully they can start to get on that front foot yet again. But so far, this has been a pretty quiet game. Decent chance for both teams as we come up to the last 5 minutes of this first half. Not much has been happening in the last 20 or so minutes, but as I say that, there is a corner to Hannover. They go near post and Udley will hit the sidening, so it's not on target, but they are starting to get a few more chances than we are through the match engine. And at half time, it is 0-0 in this first game of the new Bundesliga season. They've actually got more shots off than us, but thankfully we've got a few more on target. But even then, our XG isn't that good. A couple of players out there only going okay on 6.5s, but I don't think we need to make any substitutions as of yet. We'll just give the guys a bit of a rev up here, tell them I don't like what I've seen, and hopefully we get a better performance in the second half. We'll get things back underway now, still with that 0-0 scoreline. Ideally, a win from this game, seeing as this team is back in the Bundesliga for the first time in a season or two. But coming up to the hour mark, and we were looking at making some subs, but we're going to be forced into one now because Mikhail Mastis has picked up an injury. To be fair, was only on a 6.4, so we probably would have been taking him off anyway, but hopefully that is not too serious. Spaljak will come on in his place, and we start to make our way now towards the last half hour. Hopefully that sub might actually help us, but that's a bit of an early concern. Might be an injury there to our starting right winger, to be fair. With that spare money from the Baker deal, if Matthias Tell doesn't leave, that is an area we could look to improve. But decent chance there for Hannover. Thankfully, one of our defenders gets a foot on that, and San Jose can claim it now down the other end. And we have a set piece from a corner. Amadori there at the near post. He gets on the end of that one and picks up already his third goal of the season. He got 2 in the DFB Pokal first round, and it's a set piece. Hopefully, that's where Veladi will also be quite useful from. As you saw before, those two, the exact same height, but from set pieces, Amadori is an absolute weapon and puts that one home, and we eventually take a 1-0 lead in what has been so far quite an even game. About to make our way into the last 20 minutes of this one. Osvaldo has just picked up a yellow card. We'll make a sub. Also bring on Horvath or Sicker. Camillo will come on in his place. And hopefully those fresh legs do help us hold on here and pick up all 3 points. We're off the back of trying to make those subs. There is a highlight starting though. A free kick in favour of Hannover. Udley down that right-hand side just holds the ball up. Plays that one back there. Not too sure who that was. Actually, it's Beershunk back in the action. Now Kunze just outside the box. Now Franco back to Kunze. Good period of pressure here for Hannover. They take a long-range shot though, and yet again, that one does get blasted over the top. Our substitutions, they can take place, and there is a highlight off that goal kick. Now we play that one out to Horvath down that right-hand side. It goes back to Hurtado, and we get a chance now to play out from the back, but we've eventually taken a 1-0 lead in what has been quite an even game. So hopefully now we can hold on to it and start the season with 3 points. Blomaye plays that one to Escobar. Now Matthias Tell, nice ball over. It does find Escobar, gets brought down, but thankfully Spaljak does keep that ball for us. Just does. Now finds Matthias Tell from a tight angle. He beats Schwabe there at the near post. Matthias Tell, the wanted man, the Dream 11 man, will put that one away and make it 2-0. And hopefully that's an advantage now that we can definitely hold on to and make sure we pick up 3 points on this opening day of the season. Quite fortunately, is Spaljak to keep that ball, but eventually he will get an assist. Good finish there from Tell. I actually think that's actually kind of gone through the goalkeeper and not even come off that top post, which I thought was the case, but he makes it 2-0. We praise the guys, and that stops a highlight from the restart. About to make our way into the last 15 minutes, and Amadori is down to a red heart. We'll give Cusida some game time while he is in the team. He probably won't be once that new striker in Veladi does come back, and also probably not a bad idea to give Zoran some game time in place of Nico Benitez, who did have a decent debut in the Bundesliga, but Zoran still has quite a bit of potential. Would be nice to keep him in some decent form so we can give those two quite a bit of game time during the season. Make sure they are both some very good players for you guys in the future of the save once this one does end. And hopefully another season's time, hopefully we'll be able to squeeze another season in off the back of this one before the FM24 beta does come out. Cusida will put that one away from a Matthias Tell assist, but I'm pretty sure he was a couple of feet offside there, so this one will not count. We'll just wait here for VAR to confirm that the assistant did put his flag up, and indeed Cusida, he was offside. He does not pick up his first goal of the season. Does the former Everton man still a player we need to keep here? Because he is homegrown nation, that is why he is still here, and Carlos Pimentel is not. We're about to make our way into the last 5 minutes of this game, still with that 2-goal buffer. Poor pass there, and now it's Udley who is on the ball here for Hannover, plays that one back to his teammate down that left-hand side. Nice switch out there to Newman down the right, starts to cut inside. He takes on a long-range shot, but thankfully that one also goes over the bar. They're taking on quite a few shots from outside the box, and thankfully, so far, not that many are hitting the target. While we're here, we'll just slow things down a little bit and hopefully make sure they don't grab another goal. Also, chuck Escobar onto defence, so both our defensive midfielders will start to waste time a little bit. Shortly off the back of that, there is a throw into Hannover. Timo Werner there is just trying to get his boys to do stuff in his nice suit. I think my jacket looks a bit better now. Good tackle there from Hurtado, but it's been given as a penalty. I'm pretty sure that looked a very clean tackle. We're going to have to wait for a VAR check, so hopefully the referee can get put right here and give that one as a no penalty, because I thought Hurtado there won that ball very cleanly, and thankfully VAR this time is on our side, so it remains 2-0. Hannover don't get a chance from the spot to work their way back into this game. Overall, they've actually had more shots and the higher XG, but thankfully we've got a couple more on target and have made the most of them. That set piece through Amadori, that again should be a big source of goals for us this season, and also Matthias Tell, while he's still at the club, he was able to put one away. Now, good chance here for Justin Blomé late, but unfortunately that time, good save at point blank range there from the Hannover goalkeeper, but inside the last 30 seconds of this game, Zoran might take his time over this corner, but we're going to pick up 3 points on the first day of the season, so already getting off to a much better start than we did last season. Hopefully we can build up some points in the league before we start to focus a bit more on European football. We go looking for the striker there at the near post, but with it being Cosetta, that's not really as good a target as Amadori. Hannover get a chance to do something on the counter-attack. Quite a good foul here actually by Spaliak. We'll praise the guys and just see if that stops this from taking place. It doesn't, but very deep now into injury time. Spaliak will head that one away. Matthias Tell actually gets a good chance to get us going here on the counter-attack, but the referee, he blows full time. We don't mind that. The XG actually got bumped up by that late chance to Blomé, but thankfully we scored 2 goals before then, and otherwise it was quite an even game, but thankfully just a couple more shots on target that we did get off, and we made them count. That set piece to Amadori and that good individual goal from Matthias Tell from a tight angle, and it does mean we pick up 3 points on the opening day of the season. The one concern, how serious that injury to Mikel Mastis is. Maybe that might force our hand into improving that right wing area, albeit still got Danny Hummel at the club, so we could get by without Mastis for a little bit. We'll see how serious that injury is shortly, but a good start to the new season. We pick up 3 points on opening day with a 2-0 win away at Hannover. So a pretty good result on the opening day of the Bundesliga season here of the 10th season at Lokomotive Leipzig. Quite an even game, but thankfully just a bit more efficient in front of goal, which was something that we were not last season at times, especially in the Europa League semi-final, among other games. But thankfully this time, those goals to Amadori and Tell do mean we get off to a good start. Quite important as well, because our next couple of games are actually a little bit tough before we do get stuck in to transfer deadline day. We take on Eintracht Frankfurt as well as Wolfsburg. We might come back for one of those games, or off back of deadline day, take on Mainz and Freiburg, because to be fair, Eintracht Frankfurt and Wolfsburg are 2 teams we have taken on quite a bit so far in this save. It is fair to say, but a good start to the season, albeit we do have that injury to check in on Mikel Mastis, and it is a fractured lower arm. He will be out sort of for 4 to 7 weeks, albeit we do have the option to get him to play through that injury, and that might be something that we do, because he is our best right winger at the club, albeit we could potentially, if no one does trigger that release clause on Matthias Tell, use that money to try and improve on the right wing and maybe also in that ball wing midfield role, albeit the amount it will cost us to improve in that area is quite considerable, so I don't think that will be an option for this season. But right wing could be Mikel Mastis. That fractured lower arm could just mean that we make that move before we do come back for tomorrow's episode, but Mastis should still be able to play through that, but it does mean that Spaliak will get a little bit more game time, and that might not actually be a bad thing, because he does have a lot more potential than Mastis, and to be fair, haven't actually compared their attributes yet going into this season. He might be a better player these days anyway, but that will do it for today's episode. The transfers that we did make, not too many, but it did improve the squad just a little bit, it felt like. these days predicted to finish 6th on the Bundesliga table, and we get off to a decent start there with a 2-0 win over Hannover. If you enjoyed today's episode, then do remember to go down below, leave a thumbs up on the video, and if you haven't done so already and are enjoying the series here on the channel, also consider hitting that subscribe button and turning that notification bell on as well. As I said, tomorrow I think we'll come back off the back of transfer deadline day. We'll take on Eintracht Frankfurt and Wolfsburg off camera, seeing as we've taken those two teams on a lot on camera in the past couple of seasons. So we'll do a recap of deadline day. We'll let you guys know if Matthias Tell does leave the club. If he does, it will be because of that release clause. Otherwise, we'll use that money in some other areas, potentially that right wing, and we'll come back and play those 2 Bundesliga games in September against Mainz and Freiburg, albeit we are in the Champions League this season. I'll just check exactly when that starts, but I'm pretty sure it starts in the month of September, so we could actually come back for one of those games in tomorrow's episode. Apparently, we enter the league phase on the 8th of September, so we might be coming back tomorrow actually for Mainz in our first game in the Champions League. But either way, tomorrow we'll come back with 2 games and also a recap on the rest of the transfer window. So until then, thank you very much for watching. Keep on keeping on, and I'll see you then. Cheers.